In this video, we'll talk about configuring an SDE database for use with Sentinel GIS. When Sentinel adulticiding, larviciding, or surveillance is installed, you'll be prompted to choose which database type you'd like to use. The Esri file geodatabase works well for desktop and a handful of desktop users. It can be used with multiple ArcGIS installations sharing a geodatabase on a network location. However, a file geodatabase only permits one editor at a time, and this can be a bottleneck. The SDE geodatabase supports storing data in standard DBMS like SQL Server Express, and others. And most importantly, it supports things like multiple editors, versioning, and other things. So if we choose SDE as the storage type for the geodatabase, that's only a question you'll be asked when installing the first Sentinel module. Subsequently, the installation will assume the same settings. After Sentinel GIS is installed, the next step would be to configure a geodatabase connection in our catalog and create a new empty Sentinel GIS geodatabase. So I'm opening our catalog and going to the database server and adding a database server. I happen to be using SQL Express on my local computer, so my connection will be localhost /SQL Express. I could also leave the server name blank, but I'll do localhost SQL Express. So that creates a connection to my SQL Express instance, and now I can right-click under Contents and create a new geodatabase. I'll call it Sentinel GIS. The initial size defaults to 100 megabytes. I will make that 20 just for the purpose of demonstration here. So it is required that you create a new empty geodatabase in SDE using our catalog because the Sentinel GIS program in ArcGIS, in ArcMap rather, it doesn't have the permissions to do that. Once the database is created, it can create other objects inside of it though. The database server connection is also where I can configure permissions for users. If I right-click the database server connection and go to permissions, I see first of all that I am a server administrator. My user was set up as a server administrator during the installation of SDE, but I may need to add other users. And in this case, if I'm just adding users from my local computer, for example, I have a guest account, and perhaps I would add my guest account to this database server connection as a user, but not an administrator. Now in the Sentinel GIS database, if I right-click it and go to Administration, Permissions, my guest account, I can grant read-only or read-write permissions on this particular database, or even later on particular objects within the database. For a full discussion of security and permissions with SDE, I would encourage you to see the Esri online help. Okay, so I'm going to close out of our catalog and then get into ArcMap. Now the next set of configuration with SDE will happen whenever any of the modules extract or configuration utilities are run. That is adulticiding, larviciding, or surveillance. So if I attempt to do an extract or go to the configuration utility, Sentinel will see that I have not yet connected to my SDE database, so it's going to ask for connection details. So my server name again is localhost. The instance is SQL Express. The version in my case is dbo.default. If you had set up versioning and would be using a different version for your Sentinel users, then you type in the version name there. For a full discussion of versioning, again, we would consult the SDE help about versioning. And then authentication method can be Windows or database authentication. In my case, I'm using Windows authentication. So when I save that database connection, it saves a database connection file in my Datalink GIS merged files path. I have a Sentinel GIS.SDE file, and that will be used subsequently for any connections to the database. So now my configuration screen opens, and I could go ahead and fill that out. If I go to larviciding extract, it will now see that I have a database connection defined, and so the first time I run that, it will create my my feature classes that I need for larviciding, and then I'd be able to extract those. So if I'm sharing an SDE connection with multiple users that are running ArcGIS on separate machines, that's all controlled in Datalink GIS under the file paths options. The merge output path could be a shared network location, such as whatever mapped network drive or UNC path that you would use that's accessible to everyone. And in that case, the SDE connection file would be stored in that location, and that way everybody that uses Sentinel would be able to use the same connection file. So other aspects of using Sentinel GIS, such as creating a simple map and then working with the configuration utilities for each of the modules, are covered in separate videos.